Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome to another God of War video. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but today, with Ragnarok finally here in our hands, I thought that we could celebrate its release by me bringing you all a full-on breakdown of one of the most iconic and important figures in the Norse series of games. The Slayer of Giants, the wielder of Mjolnir, Thor Odinson. Now, just a quick reminder before we do start, here is a disclaimer that we will be covering the contents of both the 2018 game, as well as God of War Ragnarok itself. So, if you still wish to go into that game relatively spoiler-free, this might be your cue to leave. And as always everyone, before we do begin, I would super appreciate it if we could first get this video to about 1,000 likes. It's a small and minor thing, mind you, but trust me when I say it goes a very long way, especially with YouTube having recently suppressed the channel's reach. And hey, if you like what we do here and want to see more, please don't forget to subscribe, as well as tick that bell for more God of War videos like this, as we will be covering the remainder of the Aesir pantheon. So with that said, let's get on to talking about Thor. Now, Thor is from a very prestigious bloodline in Norse mythology, being a descendant from the first line of gods. Thor's family derives directly from the primordial line of Ymir, the very first giant, and Aldambla, the primordial cow, tainted by the incredible power of ancients. Odin, as well as his brothers Vili and Vi, were able to overthrow Ymir's rule, separating his entire being into fragments across the world tree that would later blossom into the remainder of the 9 realms. With the rise of the Aesir, Asgard would be born, and then the second generation of Aesir gods would shortly follow, with the most well-known among them being Thor Odinson. But Thor's birth was quite unusual, as Odin had fallen in love with a giantess called Fjorgen. Now, understandably, this relationship did raise many questions, as the Jotnar was seen as the sworn enemies of the Aesir. So it raised many questions amongst the pantheon if Odin had ulterior motives. But despite what others had thought, Odin seemed genuinely happy with Fjorgen, and together they would eventually sire the god of thunder. Now, the early years of Thor's life are largely shrouded in mystery, but it is believed from the infamous warrior spirit of the Aesir that Thor grew up embodying their values, loving the thrill of battle as much as he loved drinking mead, being drenched in both in and out of combat. The infamous tale of his blood-fueled berserker rages was something well known both inside and outside of Asgard's walls. As his appetite for battle grew, Odin would reward him with a weapon that could suit his brutality, Mjolnir, a mighty hammer forged by Brock and Sindri that would not only allow him to channel his affinity for lightning, but make it so every swing he made was as vicious as the roar of thunder itself. In time, Thor would eventually come to love another, the Aesir goddess, Sif. Together, they would have a family, raising the likes of Magni, Modi, Ulla, and finally Thrud, with all of them kind of inheriting Thor's love for combat. But things were never so simple behind the walls of Asgard. At an undisclosed time, Thor's mother, Fjorgen, would mysteriously perish by unknown means. Whilst not entirely clear, it has been strongly implied that Thor was behind her death. as during this time, Thor had also started to gain the reputation of giant killer, even if it was done in secrecy. The death of Fjorgen seemed to have fractured Odin like nothing else. And if these rumors are believed to be true in any way, it could possibly be a reason as to why Odin is so callous and cold-hearted towards Thor, valuing him more as a weapon than a son. Now, as these events transpired, the realm of Asgard would be locked in battle against another, Vanaheim. Since the dawn of time, the Aesir gods and Vanir gods have been locked in a long-lasting feud. But eventually, one day, a Vanir god by the name of Freyr would approach Asgard in the hopes of brokering peace between both sides. Freyr believed that if he taught them how to fertilize crops and soil their lands, they may hopefully see the Vanir in a different light. But instead, the ruthless Aesir took this opportunity to torture Freyr, burning him and setting him alight for their own amusement. Eventually, Freyr was able to escape, but the mistreatment of the Vanir god did not go over well in Vanaheim, as a full-scale war would erupt between both sides, with Thor taking a part in this slaughter, sinking Mjolnir into any Vanir god that crossed his gaze. But even with the might of Mjolnir on their side, the arrogance of the Aesir proved to be their undoing, as both worlds had been pushed to their tipping point. So, as a way of finally uniting the realms, a marriage was arranged between both sides, with Odin marrying the god of fertility, Freya. But despite peace being made, behind the scenes, Thor continued to hold a strong disdain towards Freya, that and well the rest of the Vanir gods, seeing them as lesser. But with peace being ushered in, Thor could finally return to his lifestyle of drinking and giant hunting, with the next giants to fall before his hand being Hrungnir, a stone giant. But his talents would truly shine during Odin's pursuit for knowledge. Not long following the birth of Balder, the Allfather would be engulfed by the prophecy of Ragnarok. Obsessed like a form of mania, the Allfather would go to great lengths in order to learn how to defy fate. And this led to him trying to steal the giant's ability of clairvoyance. But upon being rejected their ability of foresight, the Allfather would snap. Not taking no for an answer, Odin would have Thor be sent to the realm of Midgard, and what would follow would be a genocidal slaughter that drenched the world of man in an endless sea of red. Thor went on a bloody crusade, slaughtering every giant he could in his way. The giants were doomed. That is, until he came across the time-displaced Jormungandr, the only giant in the 9 realms that could go toe-to-toe with him. As their fight went underway, the remaining fragments of the Midgard giants were able to escape, being scattered across the 9 realms. But even with their escape, it was very clear that a message had been sent, and that the age of the Aesir had finally begun. What follows from this point are a long few decades of relentless slaughter from Thor, killing giants across multiple realms, including Falmer, the legendary stonemason, Starkor, and eventually Thrym, the king of the giants. But this would be done under very irregular circumstances. Despite Jotunheim being sealed off, the king of the giants was able to steal Thor's hammer, only promising to return it in exchange for Freya's hand in marriage. So a deal was made. But what Odin and Thor saw was an opportunity, not a deal. Under the gaze of Freya's Sidra magic, Thor would be disguised as the goddess to retrieve the hammer. But what they hadn't told Freya was that Thor planned to massacre not just Thrym, but every giant in Jotunheim and then continue their war. But once Freya saw the senseless bloodshed she had unknowingly played a part in, she would immediately pull Thor back, with both being disgusted at each other's actions. Thor feeling betrayed by his Vanir stepmother, and Freya, who felt sandbagged by the dishonesty of her new family. Thus, going forward, Freya and Thor would never see eye to eye ever again, and a fair deal of tension and resentment would remain between the two. Between this time and the 2018 game, Thor continues on his hunt of the giants, taking him to the likes of Midgard, where he gets drunk in a mortal home and kills a widow, and later traveling to Vanaheim, where he unknowingly does battle with the giantess Laufey. However, due to being belligerently drunk, Thor actually has no recollection of this battle, but by the end of it, both are able to walk away with minor to no wounds. Whilst largely absent during the 2018 game, his kin do make an appearance, that being Magni and Modi, seeking to impress their father, as Balder is tracking an Ashen Guardian, one that Odin has a great interest in. But during this pursuit, Magni would perish to the hands of the unknown warrior, forcing Modi to return back to the halls of Asgard as a whimpering mess. But instead of sympathizing with his son, Thor, in a drunken rage, brands Modi as a coward. Having known of his jealousy towards Magni, he believes Modi purposely left him to die, and so then brutally beats Modi within an inch of his life, tossing him away like trash. But the repercussion of these events echo through the following game, as it looks like following the death of his son, Thor has become sober for his family, possibly in the hopes of repenting, or to never repeat the mistake he had made with Modi. As whilst he definitely didn't kill Modi, Thor had left his son in such a weakened state that all it took was a single knife stab to end his life. So I imagine this is something he would actively be trying to avoid, as his wife and daughter tried their best to support him. Now, as Fimbulwinter settles in, Thor comes to learn about who his boys fell to. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, a god of war from a land far away from his own, someone responsible for vanquishing Olympus. But instead of fearing the threat he represents, Thor sees him as a fellow destroyer, a being that can push him to his limits, something his Aesir fighting spirit lusts for, but his dreams are quickly stopped in place. You see, the death of Balder naturally shocked Odin, because even with his vast array of knowledge, this was an outcome he never thought possible. For so, Odin begins to weave the thread of fate behind the scenes, not even letting Thor know of his intentions. So the Allfather seeks to provoke Atreus' curiosity of freeing Tyr. But Odin knew that they could only instigate this interest by having that seed flourish. Thus, when their protective stave was broken, after years of waiting, Thor and Odin would make their presence known, with Thor arriving at their doorstep, hammer crackling with vengeance. But much to the surprise of Kratos and Atreus, Thor requests a seat at their home to preach about peace, with Odin wagering a favor for the two to abandon their quest for Tyr, and he would not hunt them, even going as far as to get rid of Freya as a sign of good faith. Understandably, Kratos refuses said request, much to the glee of Thor, who has undoubtedly been dying to see this monster he's learned so much of. So, at the snap of his fingers, Thor is able to call Mjolnir and send Kratos flying into the sky, saying that he will invoke a blood payment upon him for every drop of blood he has shed. And so begins the fight against Olympus's former god of war. But something seems off as Thor strikes Kratos, drawing blood and rage from him. He notices how Kratos is lacking that fire and bloodlust he does for combat. And this does nothing but piss off the Thunderer, unable to believe or accept that his sons could fall to such a coward. So throughout their clash, Thor tries to pull the monster out of Kratos, forcing him to call his axe as their weapons clash. But even when Kratos is overpowered, the Odinson isn't done with him, defibrillating him so their battle can continue. Eventually, it does end in a standstill once Thor is able to get a reaction from Kratos, bringing out a very brief but very explosive moment of Kratos' repressed anger. Seeing the blood payment as now paid, he got what he was looking for from Kratos, and so then returns back to Asgard. Now, much to his own surprise, Thor comes to learn that his father had in fact invited Atreus to Asgard, despite the damage he has caused to their family. Here, Thor is forced to bite his tongue, as Odin sees potential in the young boy for him to achieve his goals. So it's immediately clear from very early on that there is a huge disconnect between Thor and Odin. And once Atreus appears in Asgard, he would actually be saved by Thor, who wards off the vicious Heimdall. Here, the young man runs into Odin and learns of his quest for knowledge, to seek out a mask that will allow him to avert Ragnarok and see beyond this reality. So Thor and Atreus are sent to Muspelheim in order to get the next piece of the mask. But in the middle of their mission, Thor has Mjolnir pin Atreus to a wall, letting the young demigod know that despite the Allfather's wishes, he has not forgotten what Atreus did to Modi, and once they were done working together, he would kill him. With the mask soon acquired, the pair return to Asgard. And it's here where we see another glimmer of the discontent between Thor and Odin, as Atreus is praised for his hard work, whilst Thor is dismissed. These issues between the two continue to surface between father and son, with Thor understandably wanting answers from his father, but Odin, instead of seeing it as a question, sees it as Thor challenging his rule. So the Allfather scolds him and tells him to stop listening to his wife, as it is her that thinks for him, and that he's better off as a dumb drunk. These words evidently seem to cut extremely deep, as the next time we see Thor, he is in a tavern drinking his sorrows away, much to the heartache and discontent of both Sif and Thrud. When approached about doing a mission by Atreus, a glimmer of that rage begins to flare in his eye, as his spite towards the boy only grows. But this is quickly halted by his daughter, as she expresses her disappointment in her father, falling back into old habits at a bottom of a bottle. But before there's a resolution to this conflict, Thor inadvertently starts a huge bar brawl, allowing him to let loose and at least have some form of fun. But this quickly passes as quickly as it started, and Thor has to face the reality of disappointing Thrud. This is only exacerbated when he's forced to go on yet another mission with Atreus. And despite his issues with the Jotnar, it seems like Atreus is trying to appeal to his better side, the father opposed to the giant slayer. And whilst appreciated, he still feels uncomfortable about Atreus' presence, as well as his own intentions. This all comes to an explosive standstill once the final part of the mask is acquired. With it complete, Odin appears once more, congratulating Atreus on his fetch quest. But much to everyone's surprise, they would be interrupted by Sif, who reprimands Odin for treating his son like utter garbage. But instead of listening to her and how he's emotionally crippled his son, she is instead immediately dismissed. Realizing that their family is in danger, Sif makes Thor come to realize the importance of his own family, despite what the Allfather does say. And what's to say that Thrud won't be Atreus' next victim? Sensing truth to her words, an emotionally charged Thor takes aim at Atreus, swinging Mjolnir upon him. But luckily for the young lad, he is able to teleport out just in time. The next time Thor is seen is during Ragnarok itself, with the remaining realms charging at their doorstep. The Odinson makes his presence felt, as Mjolnir rips and tears its way through every adversary he sets his eyes on. That is, until he sees Jormungandr once again. Seeing an opportunity to right his wrong, Thor seeks to correct his error and does battle with the World Serpent once again. But in the middle of their clash, Thor strikes the World Serpent so hard that it is sent back in time from a fracture in the World Tree. With the giant serpent more or less taken care of, Thor can now set his eyes on another mistake: Kratos. Having seen him and Atreus around Thrud, he immediately springs into action, attacking Kratos and screaming at how he is tired of both him and his son. So the rematch between the God of Thunder and the God of War begins. And this fight is brutal, as wounds are torn open, thunder and flame crackle, and blood is spilt. Despite Kratos' attempts to stop this fight, Thor is too lost in his rage to halt. Thus Kratos is forced to overpower him and pin him down to make him see sense, as Thor still sees him and his son as a threat to his daughter. But Kratos assures him that whatever perception he had of him, he's wrong. And really, it's here where we kind of see the long-term damage Odin has done to Thor's psyche, as even in defeat, he proclaims himself to be a destroyer. And if Kratos truly realizes who he is, but the Spartan, better than anyone, knows what a monster is. And Thor, if anything, was a monster made by his father. So Kratos tells him, for the sake of both their children, they must stop. They must be better. And these words really resonate with Thor, as he sees that it may not be too late for him to change. But sadly, it is. As once Thor sees reason, Odin makes an appearance, scolding his son for not being his instrument of war and disobeying him. Seeing that Sif's words were right, Thor, for the first time in his life, defies his father's will, dropping Mjolnir and telling him no. But to everyone's surprise, Odin pulls out Gungnir and stabs Thor. Seeing no use for a weapon that defies his will, he exterminates his own son before his daughter, as Thor reaches out his hand to Thrud one last time. And that has been the tragic and very complicated history of Thor, a monster that seems to have been shaped by a far greater evil. I think that we all knew that Thor's downfall would be something to witness, but I don't believe many had predicted this outcome to have been at his father's hand. Now, don't be dissuaded by all of my words here. Thor did some horrific actions in his time, but there seems to be a duality of who Thor is and who Thor wants to be. One is a weapon, a battle-hardened warrior that embodies the living fighting spirit of the Aesir. And then there is the family man, a figure Thor aspires to be, but just cannot become as he continues to fall into sorrow. But for now, everyone, this has been the history of Thor. I hope you have enjoyed this one. I have honestly missed making these, is. So I thought that I would come back by doing it in a very big way. With that said and noted, what did you think of Thor in Ragnarok? Did you like this interpretation of the character? Do you like what they did with Mjolnir and how it would fall into the hands of Thrud? Please do comments down below, as I'd love to hear what you have to say. With that said, the next episode will be on Odin, and that will be out next week. But now, as always everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting, as Ragnarok is finally here. Take care everyone, I'll see you soon.